After the bona fide blockbuster success of Jaws, Spielberg's blockbuster phase of filmmaking would continue, but not in the way anyone expected. Spielberg had his choice of movie to make, with offers for Jaws 2, King Kong, and even Superman, but instead he went with his heart and gambled his burgeoning reputation on a science fiction film, the movie that would end up being called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You might be wondering, wait, how is this in any way risky? Science fiction, especially alien films, are super common nowadays, in all shapes and sizes and genres. That is true now, but it most certainly wasn't back in 1977. Sci-fi films, specifically alien movies, were liked, but they weren't the mainstream successes that they are today, the one exception being 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was exactly that, the exception, not the norm. For Spielberg to make this movie was a dicey career decision, but he went ahead regardless, and despite a tumultuous production involving a company on the verge of bankruptcy, an ever-rising budget, unreliable special effects again, and a cocaine-addled producer, yeah, it's a long story, the film premiered to critical and commercial success. While not a complete smash like Jaws, which was overtaken in box office by Star Wars the same year, the film still raked in a sizable amount of money and was warmly received by audiences. And after being snubbed for Best Director nomination last time with Jaws, Spielberg finally got his due with a nod for this film. The Academy said, that makes too much sense, so let's make sure not to nominate for Best Picture. Anyways, it doesn't matter because both awards went to Woody Allen for Annie Hall. Make of that what you will. Just like Jaws, it would end up becoming an icon of popular culture, always referenced and parodied even as early as 1978 with the James Bond film Moonraker. And it remains a classic to this very day. And I think it's just fine. I need to emphasize that I don't think this movie is bad. It's too well made for that. And just like with Duel, I'm clearly in the minority of not caring for this one, as its mark is quite indelible. I just didn't feel much watching this. I wish I could share in the love that others have expressed for this movie, because those who do compare it to a religious experience, similar to what our protagonist feels. Roy Neary is a regular everyday fellow who's more content indulging in so-called childish pleasures than in being a father. But this all changes when he has, what else, a close encounter. He sees a UFO and feels called to see it. Family, life, and government cover-ups be damned. What follows is a personal and spiritual journey to transcend the confines of this planet. That sounds way more epic than it actually is. Most of the film is Neary, played really well by returning collaborator Richard Dreyfuss, moping around with his family and nearly losing his mind or just straight up losing it. It's not exactly fun storytelling on display, and the repetitious nature of these moments really wear down on you. Sadly, the B-plot isn't much more interesting. It focuses on a group of scientists led by Claude Lacombe trying to track down and communicate with the UFOs. The reason it's not very interesting is because, well, we know the aliens will touch down eventually. It's on the damn poster, for crying out loud. There's not exactly any tension in that department. And because of that, despite some pretty good performances, I'm just left cold by the end of it. Again, I wish I was more engaged with it like everyone else, because it's supposed to be one of those life-changing movies, but I just don't feel anything watching it. I feel terrible because this is just as well made as Jaws and has bigger ideas behind it. Much has been said about the autobiographical overtones in the film, marking for Spielberg's first true, big, personal film, and the movie itself has been seen as a spiritual fable in the guise of science fiction, with Neary entering his own Mount Sinai at Devil's Tower and being carried away to the sky in a chariot of fire, or a UFO. It's all brought to life by visual effects that equal that of its influence, 2001, and its rival, Star Wars. It's a truly staggering achievement, especially considering how the vast majority of the effects were optical illusions, meaning shots had to be combined in post-production and the actors were forced to react to nothing. One of the earliest examples of this being done. While it didn't win its VFX Oscar, it did win a cinematography Oscar, the first Spielberg film to do so, and a worthy win by returning cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond, who created unforgettable images with incredibly harsh lights and compositions that emphasize the size and scale of the whole situation. John Williams remains no slouch either, and in 1977 launched not one but two iconic melodies. Leave it to Williams to make 5 notes so instantly recognizable that a James Bond movie gives you an homage the very next year. On the whole, the movie is as well made as always, and everyone in front of and behind the camera gave it their all. And then there's Spielberg, who was at the perfect time in his life to make this movie, giving us a very specific snapshot of what mattered to him at the present moment. It was here where the trademark Spielbergian wonder was properly born, and which catapulted his career into success and even further into the hearts of the masses. If only it catapulted itself into my heart also. Again, there's obviously something wrong with me. Maybe if I see one of the other versions I'd like this more. I saw the director's cut, so that's Spielberg's preferred version. But I'm honestly fine with not revisiting this one anytime soon. at least not until I have kids or something. It's an exquisitely well-made film that I personally hold no affection for, sadly, but I am ultimately glad it exists. It gave us the Spielberg we now know, and that's not a bad thing.